Ed, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's great to see you.
Yeah,
again.
man.
Yeah, man. Great to be back.
Yeah.
You have been so busy. Like I've seen your name on like every property, and I love it.
We're catching up with you in Canada. What are you up in Canada doing? Can you tell us anything about that?
I'm doing an Amazon show that they're doing with Blumhouse called the Horror of Dolores Roach. It's like, it's a pretty hardcore horror show based on a podcast. I think of the same name.
Oh, okay, interesting.
But yeah, it's good. I'm doing the last 2 episodes. So.
Oh, awesome. So you seem to be the guy they bring in for season finales. It seems to be becoming your thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I guess, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting a little bit of work that way. But yeah, I mean, I do whatever. I'm just basically.
That's fair.
If you want to hire me, I'll do it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Bring in Ed.
Is this your first time working with Blumhouse or no?
I worked with Blumhouse. I mean, I had 2 films in development with them years ago, like 2 different times, and they both fell apart. And then Greg Hale, my partner, and I co-directed this thing called 12 Deadly Nights, I think.
Yeah.
Which was like their first. It was like YouTube Red, like it's like one of the first streaming things that Blumhouse did. We did one of the episodes for that show, but I've been, we've been Blumhouse and us. We talk. We're. It's like we're in the same circle, so.
Sure.
Yeah, you seem like prime Blumhouse directing material, right?
Well, like both of you guys have that same approach, well, at least with Blair Witch, like what you did, low budget, high return. And that's like what Blumhouse is about, right? Keeping the budget fairly low, but going for high concept and high return.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they definitely got it figured out. And the people over there are very smart and they know horror really well. Like the 2 projects that I had with them, they gave probably the best notes of any kind of like production company studio situation that I've ever been in. Like they really know, they know horror, and you can tell with their track record shows that. So.
And do you find with other production companies you've worked with, when you work with one like Blumhouse who specifically deals in the genre, do they approach the film differently as fans of the genre and as more like insiders?
Well, I mean, everybody has their strengths, I think, and weaknesses, and it just depends on the executives that you end up with, and also, just the level of like trust they have with their, with the filmmakers. But the thing about Blumhouse is that they, they have like this horror base, and the people they have, I think, making decisions have, like are really horror aficionados, you know what I mean? And I think that they, they've just seen everything, and, and they're just, and they've had, a pretty good amount of luck too, because with success, always a little bit of luck, but they have a good formula. And, but yeah, they definitely, I mean, they definitely treat horror in a different way. Like it seems like, I don't know. I mean, not to talk disparagingly about, studio executives or whatever, but, like I said, some of them are really great with certain things and some of them are not. And, and you just kind of have to figure out, how you're going to implement notes that they give you. And it's a common thing, you're always getting notes, from a bunch of people, above you. And, and hopefully, if you get lucky, you get their good notes, at least some good notes. And then if you're unlucky, they're just, you just have to find a way to like, just not do them, or, kind of hold your nose. I mean, it's,
maybe trade one for the other, possibly. I'll give you this, but I keep the beheading.
It's just the way, it's just the way it is. You're always going to get notes, and that's,
Yeah.
Sure. Your episode of American Horror Stories was fucking brilliant.
Oh, thanks, man.
Tell me about working with Ryan Murphy, and like, because out of that whole season, like, I'm very hit or miss with American Horror Story as a whole. Out of that whole season, your episode, the drive-in theater episode, was my favorite, thanks, by far, and it was just so perfectly bloody and like tongue in cheek. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was, the script was really solid. And I was really, I was pretty intimidated to be working with Ryan Murphy for the first time.
Sure.
It's just like this. There's this machinery that is attached to to his he runs this big huge thing, and it was just kind of amazing to see it in action, And the thing about it was really surprising was that I didn't get much time with Ryan, but he got on one of the meetings and he went through the script, and he had actually read the script, and I'm like, like, how does somebody who has that many TV shows and
right.
that many scripts, like, it's just crazy. And actually, before I even, like, right as I was taking the job, they wanted me to talk to him, and it was like time like in his car between his house and the studio, and and we couldn't find like a 15-minute block to just chat, so I understand that he's a super busy guy, but I did really appreciate the fact that he at least read. It seemed like he read the script and he had notes and he had like ideas. But it was cool. I mean, it was like, it's not that we had like unlimited resources, but there is this level of like, well, you have this kind of luxury of being able to do things that all other productions are like, oh my God, the budget and this and that, and they're not going to give us any more money. Like I think he has, enough power, that his people have enough power to be like, well, we need another day, we're just going to take it. And that's the,
nice. Sure.
We need more money for that. We're just going to, do it, whatever.
Let's print some.
So, it's cool to have somebody, with that kind of power, on your side,
Sure.
But it was a trip. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and it was stressful again because, everybody wants to do really well, and, everybody is trying to bring as much of their A game as possible.
Sure.
Was there ever a moment where you say you're in there and they have like not unlimited, but close to unlimited resources? Was there ever a time when you're like, you know what, I've never asked for this, but this is the time. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it this time.
Yeah, I mean, just crane shots in general, like, are kind of a luxury, and also like for me, like, crazy crane stuff is like really evident, and like, I think people like to show off a lot with crazy camera work that's kind of unnecessary. So I try to keep that under control because of, I don't have the budget, and also, sometimes, with more limited resources, you come up with a more, creative and cool solution to stuff.
Right.
But we had the day of like wide shots in the drive-in, and we had this crane, and just like you have all these extras, and but no, I try to fight the whole thing of like just asking for stuff for the sake of it, because the thing is that you never know when you're gonna actually need something later on that is like a legitimate need, and they
Right.
oh, you already burned through this, and you don't want to get a reputation for being like an expensive director.
Right.
Sure.
I
yeah.
should have only set 15 people on fire. It shouldn't have been 30.
It didn't need to be the whole orphanage. Damn it.
Well, I think one of the things I like the most about American Horror Stories versus American Horror Story, because I love both properties, but American Horror Story, Ryan oftentimes tends to write a lot of plot lines in a season, and it's oftentimes hard to wrap all of them up like appropriately. And I feel like as a fan, oftentimes I'll come away from each season being like, wow, that plot line was great, but that other one they just didn't do anything with. And I loved the Stories one because it was like every episode was its own plot, right? So he didn't need to worry about tying everything up at the end.
Much more
like,
self-contained.
Yeah.
They were like little mini movies, and that's kind of the way he wanted to make them. Like they're like a different, almost like a little different subgenre, of horror, each of them. Yeah, and I agree with you. Like I've seen like 3 or 4 of the American Horror Story seasons, and there's some really great stuff in there, but sometimes it gets a little convoluted. Just so many storylines, and I mean, but that's that's kind of a problem with pretty much every television show. Like there's very rare times where every single plot line is, is taken to,
Sure.
to where it needs to be, to a satisfying place. And I guess that's just part of, I think, as, the TV writer and the writing. I mean, I think you just throw a lot of stuff out there, especially now when there's so much competition. You just got to keep things moving and keep things kind of, new discoveries and twists and stuff. And I think that's really hard to kind of, it's easy to kind of make twists, but it's hard to bring them back together at the end of the season. I think a lot of shows, suffer a little, parts of it, from that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, with anything long form like that, the longer you do it, the more you have to build, and the harder it's going to be to wrap it up.
Yeah, you guys watch Lost probably, right? Like,
oh my
sure,
God,
of course, yeah.
9 years of my life.
Yeah, like I love Lost, but like midway through the second or third season, or even earlier, you realize like there's no way they're going to be able to get back.
Well, and I love when that show ended.
They try so hard.
When that show ended and there were 0 answers available,
Yeah.
I watched an interview with J.J. Abrams that was done like a week after the show ended, and someone was like, "What the hell, man? Like, what is the point of that show?" And J.J. Abrams goes, "I don't know, Magic Island." And then just like moves to the next question, and it was like, "Wow, dude, that's the biggest troll I've ever seen."
Like, have you ever been to a Magic Island? I have.
Exactly.
All right. So
Yeah, but it was, it's still a fun ride,
Oh, it is.
Hell yeah.
I honestly love Lost the whole way through, part way, because I don't know what the fuck's going to happen next. And it's going to be some crazy shit every single time. And that's going to be entertaining, at least. And it's going to surprise me.
Yep.
But talking long form versus short form, where you're really being known right now is how powerful you are at telling short form stories. I mean, some of them are still short, but you're moving to TV so much. You've obviously done American Horror Stories. You brought in on Yellow Jackets and Charmed as well.
Yeah.
And an anthology. So can you talk a little bit about doing TV and shorter form stories versus like a feature?
I like TV because it's a little easier as far as like responsibility. Like I've I have this, there's a difference between like features where like the director is kind of the main creative force behind features, as opposed to television where really the writers are really the creative, the ones that are leading the creative charge. And I like not having all the responsibility on my shoulders as far as like making decisions. Like I think that I have more confidence in myself when somebody else has kind of laid out some groundwork,
So you like coming into an existing world.
But also it's like cowardice from me, from my point of view, because like I love feature films, and I love the idea of like making feature films, but I'm not sure if I'm like cut out to be like a feature film maker. You know what I mean? Like the films that I did, Blair Witch, and the films that I did afterwards were like, some of the most, exhilarating stuff that I'd done, like really fun and, creatively. I mean, I'm proud of all my films. But they were all really painful. You know what I mean? In development and production, editing, and then the release, marketing. The public reaction. I just like we got away from indie filmmaking, almost 10 years ago, and because we were having, it's just hard making money in that world, like totally independent film. But also just for me, like for just my state of mind has like really improved. I'm just a much happier person and just less depressed. I've always like struggled with depression, so like even like I did this, I'm doing this anthology now called Satanic Hispanics, and we shot the film in Frederick, and it was really cool because I got to work with a lot of local people.
Yeah, got to catch up with you a little bit on that set.
Yeah, exactly. And I love doing that, and I love working locally, and I love bringing work there. And part of the, now that we've gotten kind of this short film done, There's some other opportunities that are happening in Frederick, where I live. Because of this short film, like the company's now going to financing some low budget features that I'm executive producing. But just doing this short film where like, I directed it and I'm editing it, and a lot of my son is in it. I have a lot of my friends are in it. Like it's very much like it's kind of centered around me. I've just felt really uncomfortable with it, and it's been it's been a really hard. I've had a hard time with it.
Wow.
Like it was definitely fun, but I definitely had a hard time, and I'm trying to figure out like what is it that what's the difference? Why do I feel? Because I'm doing like much more complex stuff in television, and a lot of pressure, and people are gonna the executives are watching. Like there's a lot of pressure in this, but there's just a difference.
Do you think it has anything to do with the idea of like a collaborative effort versus like being the major force behind something?
Yes.
I know for me doing music, when it's just me leading a band and like arranging the parts and making sure, like I get ridiculous, not just anxiety, but I feel like, wow, this feels less collaborative. It feels like it's all about me, and like that's uncomfortable on some basic level.
Or like a vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's exactly that. It's exactly that. Just the amount of stress that I've had with this, short, and the film is good, it's a goofy little film, and it's, really low budget, and it shows its budget, and the whole anthology is, that style, it's a low budget, kind of fun horror movies. But just something about like, making it in my hometown, and just, again, like being centered around me. Like the only reason that we're shooting this movie here is because of me. And, it's like you were talking about your band, like it just feels much less collaborative. And, it's just like, I'm just more responsible for it. And I just put more, I just put so much more pressure on myself. And I've dealt with it every film that I've done, I've dealt with this. And I thought I was over it, and I don't know, I'm not sure, because now like there's definitely, ever since I've been doing pretty well on television, like now my feature career, like there's a couple of people that want me to do a feature, and they're like, right now we're like, doing a deal for a film that we're going to shoot next year, and it just scares the crap out of me, man.
Wow.
It scares the crap out of me, and like I've gotten to the point now where I'm like really comfortable doing these television shows, and I'm constantly kind of kind of leveling up on the stuff that I'm doing, and I feel really comfortable, and I'm like, part of me is like, why even bother with features? You know what I mean? But again,
Well, do you think in some way though that fear helps keep you sharp? Right? Like
absolutely.
I feel like the alternative to that, like being so certain of like, oh, I couldn't possibly make a mistake, is going to fuck up your game more, right?
No, absolutely. And honestly, like you can't have that, you can't have that attitude at any time, any place, like the moment that you think you got it all covered is the day that you're going to fail. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like I still get like, I still really over prepare a lot for the TV stuff, and I get nervous about certain scenes, and there's anxiety with that, but it's very manageable. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And also the idea that I love, you in TV, you go in and you work for like 3.5 weeks, and then you go home. I go home and I give edit notes for 2 or 3 days, and I'm done. Like I don't, there's, I get, there's no other business with a feature. It's just such a long.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you're doing a low budget thing, it's just like so much work, and you're with it for so long that I don't know if you don't get bored of it, but you do. There is this level of like, I don't know what the hell I'm watching now. I don't know how to make any calls on this. So I like the the kind of the brief kind of work really fast, really hard, and then take a little time off, and then go back and work again for 3 or 4 weeks. I really like that instead of like the years long process that is making indie films.
You mentioned films you're executive producing. There's one that's shooting also locally that I've also been working on. I don't know if we could talk about the name of it, but it's being directed by Jamie Nash.
That's right.
You and him have collaborated on many, many things. Lovely Molly, some of the other films that you mentioned, Altered, I think, as well, right?
Yeah, Altered was the first one that we did.
Okay. Yeah, can you just talk a little bit about your guys' partnership and how you guys work together so often?
Yeah, Jamie was this, like it was post, Blair Witch, and I was back in Maryland, after living in Florida for a while, and I was, this is 3 or 4 years after Blair Witch, and I was working with a producer, and he went on this site called Ink Tip, which is like it's
the
like
writers' website.
Yeah, the writers, which is a lot of really great stuff on there. And we were looking for a script, and he's like, "Hey, I found this script, called it was called Probed," and I read it and I loved it. It was basically altered with a little more comedy, like a little bit kind of slapsticky, a little bit. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is great! I'd like to meet the writer." And it happened to be Jamie Nash, who lives less than an hour from me. So it's kind of it's kind of weird.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird kind of connection where I'm looking for scripts literally could be anywhere in the world, and this guy lives driving distance from me. So we collaborated on Altered, what ended up being Altered, and he's he's just a really good guy. He's super smart and can write really fast, and I just dig his writing. And I think pretty much everything since then, feature-wise, has had him, has had his, his writing in it. Like we did Seventh Moon together, we did Lovely Molly, and then we did Exists, and then he wrote the short that we did in VHS 2.
Yeah.
He wrote the short that we did in Portals, and then he wrote this short in Satanic Hispanics. He's just and he collaborates with a lot of writers too, so he's always kind of bringing in new, kind of fresh, he's not like a jealous, jealous writer who wants to control everything. Like he does he's really good at collaborating, and I think that's what keeps everything fresh.
Do you find yourself collaborating on story more when you're with Jamie, you are inputting on story, or you just kind of let him do his thing and then do notes?
It depends on what it is. On the feature side, it depended on what it was. Altered was, pretty much all written, and then I came in and definitely adjusted things and whatever. Seventh Moon was much more collaborative, almost 50-50. We wrote that. Lovely Molly was mostly me. It was his initial idea, and then he wrote half a draft, and for some reason it was just I had this kind of different movie in my head, and so I wrote most of Lovely Molly, and then on Exist he wrote most of Exist with when we collaborated on the story. So and then but mostly especially for the short things, I'm just look, we have we have opportunity to make a short film, 15 to 20 minutes, what do you have? And he just sends a crazy amount of ideas.
When I was talking to him the other day, he mentioned that someone had come to him with this current script that he's shooting, and he got back to them with a full draft in 2 weeks or something absurd like that. And you mentioned how fast he is, and yeah, it's kind of amazing.
I feel like you're that fast.
I'm not that fast.
I've seen you be that.
I'm not that fast. That's damn fast. A feature in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, yeah. That's obviously, he's been exercising that writing muscle for many years, but that's the real writing. I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about do I write? They're asking me if I write. I'm like, yeah, I write, but I'm not really a writer. My partner Greg and Jamie, a lot of the other writers that I've worked with, I feel that's real writing. I can put a script together, but it's Lovely Molly took me 9 months to finish, which is the last thing that I did mostly by myself. So I'm just really slow and again, I don't trust myself, and I keep going back to stuff and revisiting things, and I think that Jamie has just gotten to a point where he's just I'm just gonna throw it out, and his brain just like works, and he has like the save the cat thing so ingrained in his head that he just kind of weaves this. He knows what buttons to push when he needs to push them. I mean, and he's a good guy, and he's doing some more directing now, which is good, and he's directing his first solo feature.
Yeah, and I'm excited for people to see that. It's another thing shooting right here in Frederick, which is actually paying homage to a place that's going out of business that we all loved very dearly.
Terrace Lanes.
Terrace Lanes is closing, but I'm so glad that there's a send-off for this place that really, gonna make it live forever in some way.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that they're closing it, that they closed down and stuff, and I guess they're gonna build like condos, right?
Condos.
It's not just
condos.
Terrace, like that shopping center on the other side of that has like Mexicali Cantina and that really cool
I love that place.
Gaming shop. Like they're getting shut down too. And
For real?
Mexicali's going down too?
I know. I know. It's
Damn,
literally
dude.
the best queso dip in like
that
3
place
states.
is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Nobody else mixes queso and guacamole. Get out of here.
Lord.
Yeah,
Condos.
like it's kind of and it's
Fucking
all the build.
condos. It's
Now-
gonna be that stupid architecture too when they just like come in and they tear them down, they plop it, and it looks like nothing else in Frederick, and it's just gonna suck.
some like Kafka-esque like
Some
waking
fake
nightmare.
German architecture
Just
that
brutalism.
pivoting a little bit. You talked about Exists, which I love that movie. It's maybe my favorite Bigfoot film. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about that movie, but specifically about your love of Bigfoot and your fascination with the legend.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the 70s, so like, Bigfoot was like the big
Boggy Creek.
Boggy
and all
Creek.
that.
Legend of Boggy Creek, and then the Patterson Gimlin footage, which is really like one of the early things of like found footage. Like to me that film inspired Blair Witch more than anything. So I was just terrified of this thing when I was younger, but it was like this kind of fascination, with being terrified by it, and so I remember sitting in front of the TV, like literally like a foot from the TV, and watching the Bigfoot documentary that, because it was a point where there were just like so many Bigfoot documentaries, like everybody was doing like little Bigfoot stories. There's Bigfoots in Maryland, like, there's a Bigfoot sighting in Maryland,
Every state
And
of
he
the
gets around.
union has a Bigfoot now.
everything, it was just like the hit, and, he was on, $6 Million Man, and, it was just, there was Bigfoot, craziness in the 70s. And, but it always scared the crap out of me, and I remember like sitting in front of the TV and like watching a Bigfoot documentary and then having to switch in the middle of it to like, Battle of the Network Stars or some other, Chips or some other, show that just kind of completely took my mind. Then I would go back to the documentary, so I could only take it in little bits, and then it would like haunt me for weeks, especially at night. Like I always thought that Bigfoot was gonna like, reach in, through the window.
Sure.
But I watched all the Bigfoot crap, and
Were you living like near the woods?
Yeah, well,
at this point in your life? Okay.
We had like this little sliver of woods where like there was a creek between the two like apartment complexes.
A boggy creek.
And I was positive that Bigfoot went through there every once in a
course.
while.
Sure, he probably did.
Looking for tracks and shit, it was like stupid.
You never know.
But I always felt that like, other than Harry and the Hendersons, like nobody ever really spent money on a good Bigfoot suit.
Sure.
And I felt that like, the big problem with most Bigfoot movies is that there wasn't enough Bigfoot. Because they weren't, most of them they're all low budget, and they can't afford to put a bunch of money into a really good suit and, shoot it properly and all that stuff.
Yeah, and those movies, by the time the last act hits and you see it, it's always kind of disappointing sometimes, right?
Always.
It's very rarely
Always.
It's
great.
basically a scary Muppet.
Always. And also like, for me, like, Jaws is a shark movie. You know what I mean? Like it's great. It's a work of genius, but at the end, like you want to see that damn shark, and you got enough of it, at the end. And I think that's like the formula that I've always like adhered to, like when doing monster movies, you know what I mean? It's like, you gotta like, you gotta make it where like, you gotta give the audience what they want at the end. It's a monster movie, you know what I mean? So I always felt that Bigfoot was really like badly represented as far as like films, like actually the look of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So my big thing was like I think I can do a Bigfoot, like in like a real, and this is like even way before exists. Like I had a script called Manable Walk, which is like it was like this period piece.
Well, a Bigfoot period
A
piece.
Bigfoot
Yeah.
period piece, and I I wrote it right after Blair, and it was actually like not right after Blair, but a few years after Blair, and it actually got some traction. It got optioned, and it's still one of my favorite scripts.
What period did it take place?
It's like right after the Civil War.
Hell yes.
Oh,
19th
wow.
century Bigfoot. I'm here for that.
Yeah, yeah. So and I always in putting that kind of little package together, trying to sell it. Like Greystoke. I always loved the apes in Greystoke. Like I felt that like if you could take the Stan Winston model, Rick Baker kind of that kind of level of work and put it in a Bigfoot suit and shoot it properly, I think you could get some cool shit. So that my thing with Exist was just like, let me see if I can put a cool Bigfoot on the screen. And that was basically the whole idea of the film. You know what I mean? Like just trying to elevate a Bigfoot movie. For once. You know what I mean? Like make it like satisfying at the end. And that was it. And then we came up with and again, it was like one of those things. We had like a bigger budget version of Exists that was set in like Siberia.
Nice.
And it was going to be found footage and kind of a bigger budget and really cool. And actually, man, I would still love to make that movie. And we actually almost sold it, man. It was kind of a hot script for a while, and then Legendary loved it. Like they were like, oh my god, we've developed a couple of Bigfoot movies, and we spent a ton of money, and this is the first one we feel that like really works.
Wow. Yeah.
And we were, we're like, oh, we almost like kind of sold it in the room. We're like, oh my god, on it. And then they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna we'll make you a deal, we'll make you an offer and all that stuff. And then they took it up the pole to the flagpole up to Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers was like, no, we're not going to do a Bigfoot movie. You guys crazy? So it was very disappointing. Like, and we had like Dimension was interested, and all the, like at the time, all the horror kind of places were interested, and it just kind of fell apart. And so that's why we kind of went back to the drawing board and said, let's just make something like a low budget Bigfoot movie and just see what happens. See if we, and it was, again, like it was, for me, it was a lot of it was just trying to prove my theory that you could put a good Bigfoot, on screen and make it look believable, and then you got, spent a ton of money on the suit. We got, Brian Steele, who's like one of the best, creature guys in the world. We have Mike Elizalde and Spectral Motion designed the suit and built it. Weta helped a little bit in early stages. And, it was just like, they just blew me away, man. Like I remember the first time I saw Brian in the suit, we were in the Spectral Motion parking lot. I mean, we're like in a parking lot, you know what I'm saying? And there's like they had like a couple little trees next to a fence and like a little bit of landscaping. So we were like, go over there and like pretend like you're foraging or whatever. And we took some video and, like I knew that the suit was going to look cool, because those guys worked with us on Altered and Seventh Moon and, a bunch, all Guillermo del Toro's films. They were one of the top effect shops in the world. So I knew it was going to be cool, but I never realized that I was going to be able to go in for that close up at the end of the movie that I do at the end of the movie,
Yeah. Like you say with Jaws, right? At the end, you get the shark halfway up on the boat. You get to look right in its eyes, right? Yeah. And like at the end of your movie, you get those moments with Bigfoot.
Yeah, you get the moment and you're like, okay, I've seen it. And then, now I'm, satisfied. So I was like so amazed by the work that, it was just, and it was a fun, of all the films I've done, it's probably the most fun because we're out in the woods, and it was we shot it in Texas, and it wasn't super hot, like it wasn't hot yet. It was like early, late spring, early summer, and there's bugs and stuff, but it was like the best place to shoot that kind of movie. It was like a studio that it was called Spiderwood. I don't know what it's called now, but it was in Texas, and it had like a sound stage, offices, and then it had like 100 acres we could kind of play on. We built a cabin, and it was cool because you were in the woods, and then you could drive down and in the golf cart down to the studio, and you'd be in air conditioned, and you could eat inside, and it was actually quite comfortable for the kinds of kind of movie that we were making. But it was cool, man. It was a great experience.
So you said earlier, I would still love to make that movie. So you would be down to make another Bigfoot movie if things aligned?
Absolutely, man. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all the time. I mean,
what about that old script? Do you ever think about bringing back that? You said that's still one of your favorite scripts. Do you ever think about bringing it back?
Yes. I mean, actually, I was thinking about it yesterday because now, I think the play would be for a TV show. For
period. Oh, dude, an antebellum period piece with Bigfoot show. I'd watch.
Yeah, like 6 hours. And
then you could flex your new superpowers of being a TV director and do it in chunks.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the best play. And actually, I don't know. I've been kind of holding back on it because I hate I hate anything where I'm I'm taking advantage of friendship, professionally. It's like always uncomfortable to me to ask people that I consider my friends, hey, what about this, But I guess it's part of the business. But there's a TV executive that really loved the original script, but she was just in she was like a VP, in a company in New York when we first wrote the script, and she was she loved it. And she tried to sell it to her bosses, and her bosses liked it, but again, it was like a $20 million Bigfoot movie. Like, who the hell's going to finance that? But she now is in LA, and she's actually she has a company and she produces pretty big freaking TV shows. She just announced something a couple of days ago, and I'm holding off just sending her a messenger saying, what about Manable Walk as a miniseries, but and again, it's one of these things where it's am I ready to go into go to Eastern Europe somewhere, because you'd have to go somewhere where there's because it takes place in the woods with snow, it's supposed to be in the middle of the winter. It's isolated area. There's a train track. So, I'm am I ready to go and, spend 6 months freezing my balls off making a Bigfoot movie or making a Bigfoot TV show? And I'm yeah, that'd be cool, but, again, my laziness and I'm just going to stay home and hang with my kid and my wife and, hang out and watch some TV and relax. But that's, it's one of those things where it's hopefully one day maybe we can do it. But again, it's it is one of the coolest scripts that I have, and I should do something with it. It's something I keep going back to all the time. So it seems like I should try to figure that out.
Yeah, I feel like if your heart keeps going back to that script, there's something there, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
If that happens, you could solidify yourself with exists and that as maybe the greatest modern Bigfoot filmmaker.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely the most Bigfoot-like filmmaker.
You are extremely tall, and that's coming from me as an extremely tall person.
Yeah, very tall.
You could go the full M. Night Shyamalan route, and at the very end of it, Bigfoot rips his mask off.
Oh my!
And it's been the Blair Witch the whole time.
Yeah. No, I think that makes total sense.
Yeah, no,
exactly.
It's super logical.
Because the woods,
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you need.
But yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's one of those things that you're right. I should probably at least reach out and see if she's interested at all.
Yeah, I like things that go back into period piece because it's made for horror. Like Western horror has been this thing I've been really interested in because the West is just violent as shit already and nobody can communicate with each other. Same with that, just an elegant way to take all of the technology, because every horror writer has to immediately write around the fact that cell phones exist at all.
Yeah.
Right, because those things are built to save your ass.
Yeah. Well, and also to me, Bigfoot as like like believability, like the idea that this thing is still is real diminishes, as the world gets bigger and
Right.
the freaking cities expand and like I'm like, all right, well, drones and satellites, like somebody, how the hell are these things hiding? But you go back, 150 years, and it's a different story. Like they dominated that area, and they were like the apex predator in that, they would be the apex predators. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Intelligent humanoid, creatures. You know what I mean?
Like I want to see Lewis and Clark versus a Bigfoot.
So it's a whole like, I think it's a whole tribe of
Yeah.
these creatures. You know what I mean?
And that's something you kind of get into with Exist is you're scared by Bigfoot, but also there's a level of humanizing Bigfoot, right?
Absolutely.
In that film. So
Yeah.
I think that's an important element of the Bigfoot story is it's not just a monster in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, when I was a kid, Loch Ness Monster was also creepy and,
Oh, yeah.
UFOs and ghosts and stuff. But for me, like Bigfoot was even creepier because there was this level of like intelligence. Because even as a kid, I made the connection that this is an old missing link. This is an old like ancestor of humanity, that just went off on a different, evolutionary path. So I've always felt that the creatures were like, they're human. They're partly human. I mean, they're not as intelligent as us, but they are human in a certain sense. So I always, like I hate like when it's like building a good villain, like nobody's evil just for the sake of being evil. You know what I
Right.
mean? You have to build some kind of mechanism to like create the idea that, of course they're like that. Look what happened to them when they were kids, or look what happened to whatever. So I always felt that, like, for me, like the creature, for Bigfoot, had to be a reason for them to attack somebody, because, like, if you believe that these things still exist, the only reason that they still exist is that they've been able to hide from us. So the last thing they would do is cause trouble with humans. Like they would like not even
Right.
Sure.
If they just attacked everybody on site, everyone would know they exist.
They would, exactly. It doesn't make any, it doesn't make sense to like the reality of like, of the Bigfoot lore. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I love Bigfoot, dude. I love like going to, we did they showed Exist last year in the Texas Bigfoot Festival.
Oh,
Film
cool.
Festival. And but just big. And I before Exist, I went to convention, and I know a lot of the guys in the Bigfoot, the main Bigfoot speakers and stuff, and I'm like, I love this stuff. Like I would love to go to a convention and just hang.
Hell yeah.
I was going to ask. So you've never been able to get to one before?
I went to one like right before we shot Exist, or right after we shot Exist. We went to one in the one in Texas, but that's the only one I've been to, man. And then the film festival. But I hope that the problem is that they're all in Texas, and it's a little bit of there's no Bigfoot festivals for some reason in our neck of the woods.
There's one in Vermont. I know that's not really our neck of the woods. Like my wife and I just went to Vermont for vacation. I had no idea Bigfoot was so big in Vermont.
Yeah.
Like, but, I mean, it makes sense because it's there's a lot of rural wooded areas there. But
Sure.
yeah, there's a huge Bigfoot convention there every fall.
So let me ask: is the Bigfoot conventions mostly like fans and people interested in doing movies, or is it more like
It's Bigfoot.
It's like awareness, and he exists, and let's spread the word. What is?
I mean, it's mostly fans. It's kind of like, I think if I went in there and started talking about how Bigfoot is bullshit and this and that, definitely not that everybody believes, but that's not what people are looking for. It's just kind of like, let's just believe it and let's just have fun with it. I don't think anybody takes it like 100% seriously unless they have to. Like there is, like I watched the.
Oh, I guarantee you, there's at least one guy at each one of those that 100% takes it seriously.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and also like there's this thing of there's this guy named Lyle Blackwood who I'm friends with. he is like an author, and he's like the expert on like Boggy Creek, and he has like interviewed people, and he's he does amazing work. But there's a couple of guys like that like and I've never really asked him like, do you really believe this? And I think he does, but there's this level of like, yeah, I believe it, but I'm not gonna kill somebody for it, or I'm not gonna.
Right.
And it's almost like it makes more like I believe it just because let's just go along with it. It's fun, and I love this, But I mean, and even me, like I mean, like if you really, like pointed a gun to my head and it's like, do you believe in Bigfoot? I'd be like, no, but there's like this. There's always this thing of like, okay,
I believe in the possibility of Bigfoot.
What the hell are people seeing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But also, if the gun's to your head, no one's dying for Bigfoot.
Right.
No
one's gonna
Well,
die
it's
for
dude,
Bigfoot.
it's the same concept behind like, and maybe to a lesser extent, but like with UFOs and aliens, like statistically they have to exist, right? Like the
Bigfoot's
idea,
a lesser
right.
likelihood,
But
because
like
of
on some level, statistically, like the chances that some sort of missing link in the primate chain does still exist are pretty high. Like
one thing that really fascinated me, I forget, it was a nature documentary I was watching basically, and they were somewhere in Asia, and there was a community of these tigers that lived in this huge wooded area, and basically people didn't believe they existed. Nobody believed they existed, and if some person finally saw one, and then this like
they got eaten,
and it was like the first one had been seen in like 30 years or something crazy like that, and then they go in and they get these professionals to actually go in, and they find a community of these tigers, maybe like 2 or 3 dozen of them or something like that, living in these woods, and just no one has seen one for like 20, 30 years, and they're big ass cats, so it's just when you think about stuff like that, you're like, okay, maybe there are corners of the world where there's still like some, besides the ocean, obviously, that there still could be some secrets, or some tight knit animal community or something that exists.
I think the fact that like every major culture in the world has some sort of Bigfoot mythology in it, like I think that is a pretty heavy statement.
Yeah.
Like there's, I mean, why I think it's
no, absolutely, man. I mean, and that's kind of the thing that that makes you wonder, like, okay, what the hell are people seeing? Because like,
right,
I mean, obviously, look, are people making shit up that they see Bigfoot? Of course. I mean, or they get confused with something. They're like, oh yeah, that's Bigfoot. They hear something, oh, that's Bigfoot. But
in reality, it's just Nick Nolte.
That's just Uncle Al.
Exactly.
He's been drinking again.
But there are some like the stunt coordinator on Exists. He had already had the job. We were like about to start shooting. I'm not sure where it was in production. Like we were about to go, and he's like. He pulls me aside. We're like hanging out. And he's like, "I've ever told you my Bigfoot story?" So I'm like, "No." So he tells me, and he's got like a pretty conservative dude, like, not somebody that I would say that is flaky in any way. Like he's a stunt coordinator, so they have to like be by the book, and they're
they got to be pretty on it,
logic, and everything. And like I said, he already has the job. He doesn't need to like impress me with a Bigfoot story. He tells me the story of like. That he's driving, with his ex-wife, and it's snowing, and they say in the middle of nowhere, and like again, like maybe I think he was saying Vermont, somewhere like in the Northeast.
Yep.
And this thing goes by him, and it's freaking a guy, a humanoid hairy thing, and this guy's a hunter. It's not a bear. It's not a deer. It's not. Sure. And he stops the car like to watch it go into the woods, and his wife's like, "What are you doing? Go, keep going."
So she's the one that's going to live through that scenario.
Yeah,
not if he doesn't go. Not if he stays there.
So he takes off, and then like a week later, Brian Steele arrives and puts the creature, and it's the first day in the woods. First thing was shot was the scene in where he's chasing the kid on the bike, and we're doing all these tracking shots for him. And the stunt coordinator comes to me and says, "You know that story I told you about?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's what I saw. That's exactly what I saw." So it's like, why? What did that guy see? And again, all these other like credible, and again, like you were saying, every ancient culture, every Native American culture has some kind of Sasquatch, some kind of Bigfoot.
I kind of feel the same way about things like vampires. Maybe to a lesser extent, because there's still a lot of mythos involved with vampires. But the fact that like every major indigenous culture has some story about some sort of blood-sucking creature or creature that feeds off of.
And who's to say they were even making that up? Because you don't have to be a supernatural creature to believe you can derive life from blood and then take it from another living thing.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm sure there's like things that that where blood is like, okay, I love blood. Let me.
Yeah. Well, and just mythos in general, like mythologies in general, come from something, right? Like it may have been, some of them may be like an ignorant misunderstanding of like natural law, but like, generally speaking, mythos come from people seeing something, right? So, like,
that's right.
I don't know. I think Bigfoot's real. Personally.
You know, I choose to believe.
I do.
I want to.
It's
believe.
because you mentioned it earlier. It's because I saw Harry and the Hendersons when I was like 8, and like, and like, I want that Bigfoot.
Well, you know, the fascinating thing is that and that's one of the things I saw in one of these Bigfoot conventions was that they like broke down the Patterson-Gimlin film like frame by frame, and you know. Could it be a person in a suit? Of course, but that's pretty damn good suit work.
Yeah,
I mean, like, it's pretty.
And that's a huge person too.
Pretty impressive suit work, and also like the Patterson. I mean, it's only famous for that that little chunk where he turns around, but that it goes on for it's like a minute and a half, 2 minutes of footage, and you see this thing continue, and it looks totally freaking authentic, and then. So in the Bigfoot convention, I don't know, I can't remember who it was, but they broke down like the idea that like the thing has breasts and like the muscle movement on the calf is like unlike, suits, Hollywood suits. And again, I guess one of those things, it's like you're doing like you're doing a hoax, you're building this suit and you're say, oh, let's pretend that we're out here, total Blair Witch thing. Let's just pretend we shoot a Bigfoot walking down, this dry gulch or whatever, dry riverbed. Let's put breasts on it. You know what I mean? Like you would not put breasts on it. You know what I mean? Like even us would exist. There was always this thing of like, okay, is it a man or a woman? Like, is it a female or male? And we're like, could be a female, but we do not want to have breasts hanging off this thing. It's just gonna look, it's just not gonna be scary. It's just gonna look weird. So it's one of those things where you're like, am I ready to like, bet my life on the Patterson-Gimlin film being real? Absolutely not. But it is pretty fascinating. You know what I mean? That this whole bit of footage is still like, it's just a weird thing, man. And even, I know that somebody admitted that it was fake or whatever, years ago in their deathbed or whatever. But even that, I'm just like, there's still this level of me again, because it's Bigfoot, that is like, I'm not 100% sure that that's fake,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that cryptids are going to be the next big government disclosure. Like the government's pretty much given us everything we want with UFOs.
Yeah.
Like that cracks me up that like 2 years ago they were still being dodgy about UFOs, and then COVID happened, and they're like, "Oh, we got to distract them somehow." Turns out UFOs have been real the whole.
Yeah, let's throw all the UFO shit at them. Yeah.
So I think the next thing is like the government's gonna be like, "So it turns out Bigfoot is real. He actually works in the Department of the Interior."
Yeah.
At the National Park Service.
Well, Ed, thank you so much for joining us on the show again. It was great to catch back up with you.
Yeah, man. No, it was great.
What's the next thing we can expect to see of yours coming out?
Well, I did an episode of Fantasy Island, which is probably coming out in the fall.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, which I thought was just a lot of fun. Shooting in Puerto Rico was cool. And then I did a Star Trek episode, which I don't think that's coming out till next year.
Is it for Worlds Beyond?
No, it's Strange New World.
Oh, Strange New Worlds. That's what
Oh, yeah, I saw the picture you posted of you on the deck of the Enterprise.
Dude.
that
was
dude
amazing.
How surreal was that?
Yeah.
It was... it was amazing. It was weird, man, because like right around COVID, at the beginning of COVID, because I hadn't watched, I'm a big fan of the original Star Trek, but I hadn't watched anything else really. Like the Next Generation, I had watched a few of them, and I always liked them, but I never had carved out a time. So I was like, I'm going to watch all the Star Trek shows.
Wow.
So, wow.
Whoa.
Chronological order. And I started with, I guess Enterprise is the first one. But I watched everything. and I'm about to start Picard now. That's where I'm at. But I watched
dude.
all Next
It's
Generation,
so good.
all Deep Space Nine, all Voyager, and and the 2 seasons of Discovery that were before they did the time jump. And I was just, and my wife's like, "Why are you doing this?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just, I want to see this. I really love Star Trek. I love, the going to, bed at night, watching an episode and then going to sleep. Like I love that."
Sure.
And then I get this, I get this job offer. I'm like, I'm ready to go, man. But so it was just really cool, cool timing. And then the biggest thing, man, was like, we were doing a scene. And one of the characters, Ortegas, I don't know if you guys have seen the show, but Ortegas, the navigator, like the Sulu, like the driver or whatever. And she had to go into, she takes another member of the crew to, into the turbo lift. And just the turbo lift, there's the doors opening and closing. I mean, how many times have you seen that in a show?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm doing a scene where somebody's going into a turbo lift, like it's fucking crazy. And she when she got in, we did a rehearsal, and she just went in there and stood, and then the doors closed, and we were like, no, you have to like grab. You don't know how to do the turbo lift. She's like, no, I've never done a scene in the turbo lift. So it was like, I'm like, because she's a main character. I was like, I literally did the first scene with her, like going into the turbo lift and actually operating it, and it was just cool, man. Like it was like
that's awesome.
me, like it was like there was suddenly I was like a part of a little bit of this history.
Hell yeah.
And it was really great, man. I mean, I hope they invite me back.
Well, I've always seen Star Trek as sort of, even from its very beginnings, sort of representative of like the best possibility of the best that humans are capable of, right? Like it's the whole premise behind that show is that like on the best possible timeline for us, like we do the shit they do in Star Trek. Like we go explore brave new worlds peacefully and try not to start wars with people. And I think every series that's come out has spoken to that to some extent. And I really love Discovery. Like I thought Discovery was brilliant. And you said you're just about to start Picard.
Yeah, I'm about to start Picard.
Dude, it's so good. And Patrick Stewart is incredible in it.
And Ed, I know you're one of the biggest Star Wars fans I know. So now that you've like dove completely into the Star Trek world,
is there like an internal battle going
Yeah.
on in you? Like,
I mean, I've always loved both of them. Like for me, Star Trek is more like a television thing. Even though I like the movies as well. Star Wars was more like like a foundational kind of inspiration. Like it got me into filmmaking, like the idea of like special effects and like how the hell they make this movie. Like it really made me like I'm a filmmaker because of Star Wars for sure. It just just different loves, but again, I would my big thing now is to get to do a Star Wars show, to direct a Star Wars show.
yeah, there's so much.
Yeah, man, get that Disney money.
There's so much TV with Star Wars now. This would be the perfect opportunity.
Well, and I mean, you talked earlier about working with Ryan Murphy and like having a seemingly, capless budget. Like you would talk like Disney. Come on, you could be like, listen, Disney, we need to shoot on the moon, and Disney would be like, we can make it happen.
Great, we already have a sea lot up there, so
Yeah, it's I actually talked to some. I know some people at Lucasfilm, and I'm definitely on their radar. I'm not sure how far on their radar I am, but I think I'm on the list. I don't know how far down, but So hopefully that'll happen. And also, I mean, my partner and I, Greg Hale, have our main thing is to try to get a television show going. We have a couple of opportunities that are happening right now that we're pretty excited about. So I think that if with a little bit of success, or even just like some minimal success in the with our own TV show, it becomes a much more realistic situation where actually we could maybe pitch our own Star Wars show. Obviously probably everybody's pitching Star Wars shows at this time, but that's when I met with Lucasfilm. That was actually the big thing. The big kind of takeaway is that he was like, "What do you have? You know, what Star Wars ideas do you have?" And judging by like how they've been like kind of laying out, you know, the series and stuff, it seems like they're trying to find new, you know, like new creative blood. You know, like they're not giving other than Jon Favreau, they're not really giving obvious people. You know, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the filmmakers are not obscure, but they're not like huge names where you think they'll be going for the cream of the crop, you know, in every, you know, in television. So they are giving like kind of these diverse, you know, they're trying to look for different stories. So you never know, but I mean, just to be able to direct on, I mean, like I know Robert Rodriguez a little bit, so I texted with him a little bit while he was doing like Boba Fett, and he was like, he's like, dude, it's like when we're kids playing with, you know, our Star Wars toys.
Star Wars toys, yeah.
It's full size.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, and I think that Lucasfilm is sort of doing the same thing that the MCU did with directors, where like
taking some chances.
When the MCU first started, Kevin Feige offered a bunch of like huge directors the opportunity to make these Marvel films, and all of them were like, fuck no, that's not going to make any money. So he ended up giving these movies to smaller directors that hadn't done as much. And I think they're doing the same thing with the Lucasfilm TV projects now. Like you said, besides Favreau, like there's not really a lot of big names in it.
Yeah.
And that's the takeaway, right? Trust Favreau.
Well, and just trust Kathleen Kennedy, dude, the head of Lucasfilm. Like, she's brilliant, and she's been with Lucasfilm the entire time it's existed. So like, I'm personally am like really happy with where she's gone with the general canon of Lucasfilm, and I'm just fingers crossed you get a show.
Yeah, I would love to see you do some Star Wars. And what is a Wookiee if not an intergalactic Bigfoot?
It's a skunk ape.
Yep. So maybe you can get your Bigfoot game on while doing some Star Wars.
Yeah, like a horror Star Wars TV show.
Yep.
It could totally be
Gecko
a thing.
the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh no, it's you know, and that's what I think you know, people are. I think the reason why Mandalorian did so well is that I mean people love the Skywalker saga, but there's so much baggage with that because we all grew up with that. So it's like there's no way. Even the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which I thought was good, I didn't think it was great. I think it got better as it went, but even that one, like, you know, like I love the fact that, you know, Ian McGregor came back, but I also, like, for me, it's like I'd like to see just something on the edge of the universe the galaxy that we haven't seen before. We saw a little, and that's what Mandalorian did. You know, like it took this little thing that, you know, and I think I hope they go and, you know, they continue down that road where like they're not constantly digging into the Skywalker saga for material.
Same. I completely agree. I think that's really the way to continue the series and keep it interesting is to tell new stories. It's a humongous universe. So, Ed, we really hope that's something that you get to do in the future. All the best of luck to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show again, Ed.
Oh, thank you, man. Thanks for having me. See you guys.